How low can we go without spending a penny? Credibility disclaimer. I am not an automotive engineer or a suspension guru or a rocket scientist. Just a crazy old dude living in a forest that was blessed with a healthy dose of common sense. This is the front suspension of a stock standard Nissan Hardbody mini truck from somewhere in the 90s. Upper wishbone, lower wishbone. There's an upper bump stop here, there's a lower bump stop there, but there's no coil spring. How can that be? That's because it's got this torsion bar right there. So how it works, the torsion bar is attached to the lower wishbone in the front, it comes back aft, and on this side you'll see there's a lever here, and it's held in place by this bolt right here. So if that wishbone wants to move up, it actually wants to twist the torsion bar. It can't twist in the back because this is being held firmly in place here. So the spring steel of the torsion bar actually twists some, and that gives the spring effect. So here in the front, here's the lower wishbone, here comes the torsion bar, and this portion is firmly attached to the torsion bar and bolted onto the wishbone. So if this wishbone wants to move up or down, it's going to want to twist and turn the torsion bar. So the torsion bar then comes back, and here it goes through this cross member of the frame, and right there at that point it can actually rotate because there's like a bush there where it goes through the cross member. And then on the back of the same cross member you've got this setup. So this lever is firmly attached to the torsion bar. It actually sits on splines, so you could take it off and put it in different positions. And then from here this lever is held in place by this bolt, which is adjustable. So the net effect of all this is when that torsion bar wants to move in the front, as the suspension goes up and down, on the back side here it can't move, of course. So that rotation is actually provided by the twisting or torsion effect of the spring steel torsion bar. So this special bolt will go through the hole in this retaining bracket, and then on the back end of the bracket will fit this special washer and then a nut, of course, to hold it in place. So what does it mean? This goes through there. I put my washer on, I put my nut on, and I can then actually adjust at which position this lever will sit. What does it mean? It means I can adjust ride height. It will not make any change to the stiffness of the suspension or the spring rate, I think that's the right word, because the properties of the torsion bar itself determines that. So the position of this lever will only determine the actual ride height, and I can adjust it wherever I want it, within limits, of course. The more I have this lever that away, the higher my ride height will be, and the more I have this lever that away, the lower my ride height will be. I've got the frame jacked up so that the wheel is off the ground. This upper wishbone is at its full downwards movement position. It's sitting tight on the rubber stop right here. So now I can undo this nut completely. So there is absolutely nothing retaining this lever. And I've done the same thing on the other side. I've removed everything completely. Again, nothing retaining this lever. It can go wherever it wants. Okay, so I've still got the chassis sitting on the jack with the wheels completely off of the ground. And I'm going to lower it now, so you'll see the chassis lowering, but you'll also see how that lever moves, because there's absolutely nothing holding it in place anymore. Here goes. Did you see that? So what we essentially saw here was the travel of this lever through the full suspension movement. But of course, because it's not attached, there's no spring holding the wishbones in place, so we've got full suspension movement. So those torsion bar adjustment bolts are still removed. So by having the frame on the jack, I can make it travel through its suspension movements. I'm currently where I imagine stock ride height would be. There's roughly equal spacing between the upper stop and the lower stop. The frame is currently at this point about 12 inches off of the ground. So yes, the chassis does not have any body weight on it at the moment. So if we were to imagine this is where it sits without the jack, once the torsion bars has been connected, what will happen if I put body weight on? Obviously it will drop a little bit. Let's imagine that is from the body weight. So I could now just readjust it by tightening those nuts in the back to pre-tension those torsion bars, if you want to put it like that, and get it back to where I was. So it's an important thing to remember then. The torsion bars settings in the back is just to adjust ride height. It will not change suspension stiffness. So let me drop it completely now and we see where we go. Oops. That's it, that's full. The jack is loose. And what have I got here now? About 6 inches. So it's dropped by 6 inches, eh? That's quite a lot. However, let's have a closer look at what's happening in there. Look there, can you see? That stop rubber is completely compressed. Excuse me. So the whole vehicle is actually now resting on that rubber. So obviously I can't have it set up like this because I've got no trouble. So let me take the rubber out so we can just see what a difference that will make. Okay, so we're just looking at it from the back. The view is clearer. I've jacked the whole chassis up once again. I've undid the rubber stop and take it out now. So now let's lower it one more time and see what happens. So why do we still have a gap here? You would think that it would be flush here now. And you know what it is? The shocks are at maximum compression. So we are actually now resting on the shock absorbers. That's why we still have a gap here. So let me see what happens if I take out the shock absorber. Before I take out the shock, let me just measure this distance here, which for all practical purposes looks like 1 inch. Close enough. 25 millimeters. Okay, let's remove the shock. Right here, the shock is out of the way. Let's drop it one more time. Pretty extreme condition. Now the lower wishbone is actually catching right there. And the gap here is not 100% closed, but very close, because it's fouling at that point there. Absolutely as far as it'll go. And now, what have we got here? 4 inches to this point. That's not effective ground clearance, but I'm just using my reference point. So we've gone from 12 inches to 4 inches, but yes, this is the extreme. But that's been a change of 8 freaking inches. Can you believe it? Obviously we can't ride it at this height because it's completely bottom out. I'm going to jack it up a little bit until I can get this piece of 1/2 inch rubber in there, like that. And now I am resting on this rubber. So this is the bottomed out condition. I'm on rubber, so that's better, but it's pretty radical. I mean, my effective ground clearance in there, holy cow, it's probably like 2 inches at best. That's a bit extreme, eh? But this is completely bottomed out. So we need to make a call now. I think it's a little bit radical. So I think I'm going to actually stick in another piece of rubber so that we effectively get 1 inch of rubber in there. Currently I only have 1/2 inch. 1 inch of rubber, and I'm sitting at about 70 millimeters, maybe 2 3/4 inches. So yeah, the rubbers are compressed now, and they will compress even more when we add body weight, so this distance will reduce. Anybody's guess as to how much it will compress, but if we say, just for the sake of the argument, another 10 mil or so at most, then we're going to go down to 60 millimeters ground clearance, which is maybe 2 1/4 inch or thereabout. I mean, you could go here if you want to, but there is then another problem. You're going to have to extend the shock towers or raise them up a little bit to get past the problem of the shocks bottoming out. Remember, I measured 25 millimeters 1 inch here when the shocks were bottomed out. Well, at the moment I'm sitting at like 20 millimeters 3/4 of an inch. See if I want, and this is still going to compress some. So that will mean I have to raise that shock tower upper mounting by at least 10 millimeters or even 20 millimeters to be safe. So I'm thinking about all this and making crude drawings. So when I still had the shock in and a shock bottomed out, that gap was 25 millimeters. So if I actually have a stop there, that is maybe, I can't write upside down, 30 millimeters. That'll give me 5 in hand. Yeah, so we have to think about rubber compression and all that. That compression is something to keep in mind. Maybe one day if you hit a big pothole really hard, you might compress more than what you think, and then what's the worst that'll happen? You'll break that shock absorber. So I'm just going to put a spacer in there of 30 millimeters, which is, yes guys, it's a little bit more than 1 inch, inch and almost 1.25 inches, a little bit less than that. And so once I've got that 30 mil spacer in, I just want to see what the ground clearance is then. Okay, so I've got a 30 millimeter block in there, and we are resting on it. Let's see, I've got bottomed out. On the bottomed out conditions, I now have about 3 3/4 inch clearance. Yeah, 95 millimeters roughly. Yeah, I think that's kind of acceptable for me, considering where I live. Dirt roads with potholes in them. So next up, I'm going to experiment a little with my effective ride height. I'm going to jack it up a little bit and provide some clearance there for travel. I'm jacked up so that the wheels are off the ground. I've replaced the torsion bar adjustment bolts, and I've sort of set them in a position where I think they should be. So let's lower and see what we get. Let's see now, how much have we got? First of all, the change from what we had right in the beginning. We had 12 inches to my reference point here. Let's just do this a little bit. We've now got about 8.5 or a little bit less, so that's almost a 4-inch drop. My effective ground clearance in this position here is about 6 inches. Yeah, 6 inches. So I now need to make a call. We're definitely lower than what we were. And you know what? Considering where I live here out here on the farm with lots of dirt roads, I think I'm going to settle for this. It's lower than what it was, but I think the clearance is still quite practical. And remember, this is right height. As you hit the hole and you go down, that ground clearance will reduce. And I'm just thinking and looking at my stop here, which is still that 30mm stick stop. I think I've got more than enough travel. There you can hear me bottoming out. I think I'm going to settle for this. So I'm trying to show this on camera and you can't really see it, but there's quite a nice rake to the frame, or a drop, what do you want to call it? A rake, yeah, I like that word. There's a rake, it's a forward slant. So this is the planned ride height. When I add my cab and my nose piece, it's going to drop some, of course, but then I'll just take up some more on the adjustment nuts in the back and I'll get it back to the position where I want it. So obviously I can't have my 30mm wooden stops, but I'm just looking at my original rubber stop here, and I think, you know, there's about the 30mm mark. So I might just attack this with the bandsaw and then use them. But I'm not going to do that now. I'm going to fine tune all this once I've got the body weight on. And that's it for my Nissan Hardbody suspension experiments. Thanks for watching my carrying out here in the forest and for enduring a very dirty set of pants. I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a good one until then.